This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the ultimate all-in-one platform to help you design your own personal, professional-looking website. You know, honestly, I think most people tend to underrate, if not just flat out outright ignore, the Winnie the Pooh franchise from Disney a bit undeservedly. I mean, not every movie is a masterpiece, obviously, but it feels like the only things Winnie the Pooh related people talk about are the two films by Walt Disney Animation Studios, primarily the original Mini Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. And I mean, those two are definitely very good movies, but they're not even the best movie of the Winnie the Pooh franchise. And that would be the movie that I am talking about in this video. I just wanted to say that you don't have to act like you're above Winnie the Pooh. It's a good franchise, and there's no real dramatic stakes. Doesn't make it bad or only for kids. Anyway, that's it for my minor rant. Now the topic of the video. Why the Tigger movie is an underrated masterpiece. I've wanted to make a video on this movie for a while now, actually. It's been one of those items on my list of video ideas that I was just waiting for the right mood to come across where I really wanted to make the video. And recently, that finally happened. I mean, I can't explain why. I can never really explain when I just feel in the mood to make a video. That's probably why the types of movies I cover on this channel are always so random. But you see, what strikes me as being so great about this movie, I mean, primarily, there's a lot of things that are great about this movie, is how it covers the topic of family, which is primarily the reason why I've titled this Why the Tigger Movie is an Emotional Masterpiece instead of an Underrated Masterpiece. Because even though it is underrated, in fact, it's more so underappreciated than underrated, but it's still underrated. I mean, that Rotten Tomatoes score is ridiculous.
You know, it's amazing. You are 100% wrong.
But, back to the topic I'm trying to say, it's an emotional masterpiece because this might be the best movie based on the idea of what it truly means to be a family ever created. And there's some pretty good competition for that spot too, like Meet the Robinsons and probably like 50 other movies I've never seen. Tell me in the comments down below, folks, how uncultured I am by not mentioning insert movie. However, if I dive straight into that emotional aspect of the video, then discussing all the other less important aspects will feel like an underwhelming ending to the video, so let me get those out of the way first. I think it is highly unfair that the only two movies that get treated as if they are high quality in the Winnie the Pooh franchise are the two Walt Disney Animation Studios movies. Just because they're made by Walt Disney Animation Studios doesn't mean they're objectively better. For example, I think the animation quality in this movie is superior to the animation quality of both of the Walt Disney Animation Studios Winnie the Pooh films. It's smoother, while also still being faithful to the original art style of the first Winnie the Pooh movie, and the unique circumstances of the time it was made with its more scratchier look, which is one of the movies that better fit that look of the era, in my opinion. And on top of that, the watercolor backgrounds here are absolutely gorgeous. Some of the best backgrounds I have ever seen in an animated project ever. They really give this movie a very cozy feel to it, a certain level of warmth. And it really makes the ending even more potent with how it deliberately goes for a very cold feeling atmosphere, making you feel even more so that that warmth has been taken away when Tigger has lost his way. And I'd also really want to mention the music of this movie. And I'm not just talking about the Sherman Brothers songs, which are pretty decent. Nothing too outstanding in my personal opinion, a couple catchy tunes here and there. But what I'm mainly referring to actually is the background music.
My very own Tigger family!
It has a very whimsical sound to it, almost grand in a sort of way, but not too grand. Just perfect for the idea of this wooded area that feels so massive to these characters, but is only really a small patch of land in the grand scheme of things. There's also this really nice piece of music that plays during some specific scenes, but that's more relevant to the family portion of the movie, so I'll save it for when we get to that topic. And of course, I can't not mention that this movie is also very funny.
Not that anyone will miss me.
I mean, Winnie the Pooh movies in general are funnier than people give them credit for. Like, Winnie the Pooh 2011 is easily one of the funniest Walt Disney Animation Studios movies that they've ever made.
Tie them together, Piglet. Can you tie a knot?
I cannot.
Ah, so you cannot.
No, I cannot not.
Not?
Who's there?
Pooh?
Pooh who?
No,
and this movie is honestly not too far behind that one in terms of humor. In fact, some of the jokes in this movie are on par, if not better than some of the best jokes of Winnie the Pooh 2011. I mean, there's gotta be at least 15 lines in this movie that would make for amazing memes. Oh, and I especially love the opening of this movie too, I should mention, where Tigger breaks the fourth wall in a very traditionally Winnie the Pooh-esque manner.
Christopher Robin's very best friend was a bear called Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh? Wait half a darn minute.
Rearranging the letters of the book to say Tigger instead of Winnie the Pooh, which is honestly a really great way to set up the style and tone of this movie right off the bat, especially when up to this point, everything in the Winnie the Pooh franchise had always been labeled Winnie the Pooh. Oh, and also, fun fact, if you didn't notice, the narrator of this movie, who mentions things every once in a while, but primarily here at the start of the movie, is actually John Hurt.
Now, this might be the room of any small boy, but it happens to belong to a boy named Christopher Robin.
You know, the War Doctor himself.
Are you capable of speaking without flapping your hands about?
Yes? No?
And some other roles that were surely not as important as that one. Well, anyways, that's everything on my checklist of supplementary materials that make this movie even better. But now it's time for the main course. The heart of the movie, as I probably always say in these videos. Tigger's search for his family, and subsequent discovery of what that word even really means. You see, Tigger feels lonely because even though he's always bragged about it before, he is the only one, the only person like himself. And whilst he does find that fact entertaining, it seems that no one else in the 100-Acre Wood quite understands his way of having fun the same way he does. Especially Rabbit, who finds him more irritating than funny or exciting.
Mounting or move this boulder? It's almost amusing.
Unfortunately, Tigger's insecurity of himself starts to grow when, even though he has a good idea for getting this boulder off of Eeyore's house, and his plan technically works, it also causes a mess in the process, which just makes most of the other characters upset at him, especially Rabbit. But Tigger still does have one fan, Roo, who still likes him despite the occasional messes he makes. Tigger starts to believe that, because he's the only one, he'll never truly be happy, since there's no one else like him, and because of this he starts to feel lonely, despite all his other friends still being there. He's worried that he'll never fit in because he's too different. But if he could just find someone else like him, another Tigger perhaps, maybe if he isn't the only one, then maybe he'll regain the happiness he's starting to lose. I like how flawed Tigger's perspective is here, since he sees the fact that the rest of the 100-Acre crew got mad at him for bouncing, that they don't like bouncing or anything related to him, and that he needs to find someone else like him because they're the only kind of person who could ever understand him. When this isn't necessarily true, Tigger's just overthinking things because he's overly emotional at the moment. The truth of the matter is that he simply went too far with his previous bounce. And just because people aren't always happy around you doesn't mean they don't still like you. You know, I know about a website that might even be able to make Tigger happy enough to give up this whole searching for other Tiggers business. It's called Squarespace. You see, Squarespace is a very dignified and refined website where you can use their very amazing tools to craft your very own website. I managed to craft a quite nifty-looking website, if I do say so myself, aided by their simple and easy-to-understand interface. A choice between pre-made templates, which look very nice indeed, or starting from a completely blank slate. You can even set up your own shop, something which I might even use in the future, who knows. I am writing a novel or 12. They even have a built-in event scheduler to help you keep track of your life. And trust me, I need that a lot. And if for some unspeakable reason you don't trust my word, you can always use Squarespace's free trial. That way you can test out all these tools for yourself. And once you've done that, make sure to use the link in the description down below to go to squarespace.com/Rockotar and use the special code ROCKOTAR to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you very much to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Now, back to our good friend Tigger. And so, as all the characters often do in these movies, they head to Owl's house to seek advice, which rarely ever ends up being the best idea. And so it is, while listening to a bunch of stuff that Tigger couldn't possibly comprehend about family trees, that he suddenly has an epiphany while fixing all the falling portraits of Owl's family, which conveniently, if aligned properly, actually appear to show a tree with all the family members on it. Oh, and honestly, not only is the paintings forming a tree here a very funny detail, but I just love the variety of characters on Owl's family tree here. And I love that one of them is literally just an egg. And these like two evil twin looking fellows. Now those would make for some interesting additions to the Winnie the Pooh cast, am I right? Thus causing Tigger to believe that he has to find an actual, literal tree that will have all his family members who look like him and will be on a tree with stripes to match them as well. But sadly, despite his best efforts, Tigger can't actually find this mythical family tree he now believes exists. I mean, even Pooh Bear, Piglet, and Eeyore join in at one point trying to find his lost family. To little success. Tigger and Roo head over to his house in the hopes that he might be able to find some sort of evidence of other Tiggers, perhaps family members that he has forgotten about or didn't even know existed. And in his search, he does manage to uncover a locket, which is sadly empty, with no photograph of the family that he is searching for. But he still holds on to it in case it may have been part of his family line before. Roo also attempts to do this. And fails. Tigger explains to him that the reason he failed is because only a proper Tigger could do that bounce, cause it's so complicated, and only a master bouncer would ever be able to figure it out. Both this and the empty locket are very important details, so make sure to remember those. So, because he doesn't have very much success searching for his family, he decides to let them come to him instead by sending a letter. And as fate would have it, this letter does reach someone. But it's not the family Tigger wanted it to reach, but rather the rest of the 100 Acre Woods crew. And in this moment, the rest of the characters, save for Rabbit, who isn't there, feel bad about this whole situation that Tigger is going through, and in an attempt to make him feel better, they decide that they should write a letter to him, pretending to be the family that he's searching for, and thinking of things that a good family member would tell him to do, to comfort him in his time of need. And thus, they send out the letter, hoping that Tigger finds it, which he does, of course. And at first it appears to work. Tigger has his spirits greatly improved at the idea of other Tiggers being out there. Tiggers who he could relate to and spend time with, bouncing and other fun things. I mean, he even sings a whole musical number about all the possibilities of all the Tiggers that could exist, which is actually a pretty good song, too. Oh, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier, too, while on the subject of this song. I really love the visual style of this song. Or should I say styles, and how it constantly shifts between different art styles of different cultures and time periods to represent Tigger's long and branching family tree of father Tiggers, cousin Tiggers, aunt Tiggers, and every Tigger under the sun. It's a marvel to witness, and another example of why I think the animation in this movie is stunningly great. Unfortunately, for the other characters, except for Tigger, they now have a new problem.
They missed me something awful, and they're coming to see me tomorrow. Where did it say that exactly? Exactly nowhere per se. 'Cause with us Tiggers, you gotta read betwixt the lines.
And so at first, the characters think that they really should just tell him the truth, that the letter wasn't from this Tigger family that he's searching for, but was from them instead, so that he doesn't get his hopes too high. But at the same time, they know that telling him that would be such a crushing thing and make it look like they were just messing with him, and so no one actually has the heart to do it. So the next step, of course, is to dress up as Tiggers, go to the Tigger party, and pretend to bounce. I mean, obviously, right? All of this, by the way, is heavily disapproved by Rabbit, who warns them of the winter storm coming in, and that they all really should be preparing for this winter storm instead of dressing up as Tiggers and going to a party. But none of the other characters have really thought about that because they're so worried about Tigger in this moment. Foregoing Rabbit's warnings, the other characters decide to go to the party dressed as Tiggers. In a last-ditch effort to fulfill the promise they accidentally ended up giving him. And while it does at first seem to be working, Rue gets too excited in the chaos, and unfortunately breaks the illusion. Not that it would have lasted much longer anyway, with disguises like that. And this brings us to the most heartbreaking moment of the movie. Because now Tigger feels like he's been played for as a fool, thinking that they truly don't care about him, because why would they play such a big prank on him when he's so eager to see his family if they knew how he really felt, completely oblivious to why they actually did it. And sadly, in his overly emotional state, Tigger decides that he's going to leave forever and search for his family until he finds them, because he doesn't feel welcome here anymore.
TTFE. Ta-ta. Forever.
However, it becomes abundantly clear just how bad of an idea this actually is for Tigger to leave at this time, especially when Rabbit once again reappears to give the characters one more scolding. But they realize that they can't just let Tigger leave into this snowstorm. He'll surely be buried alive, or freeze in the Arctic temperatures. And even Rabbit reluctantly realizes that they are right, and that Tigger is more important than anything else they need at the moment, and thus they head out to save him from himself. And in the vast wilderness and snows, Tigger grasps hard to his locket and note from his family, and seemingly in his most desperate hour, finds the family tree he had been so earnestly searching for. But when he finds that family tree he was searching for, there's a terrible realization that nobody is there. It's empty, just like the locket. But even still, Tigger refuses to leave, hoping that maybe his family will show up at this tree if he waits. And eventually, someone does show up, Winnie the Pooh and company, trying to save Tigger from the snowstorm. But Tigger refuses to leave, because they're not his real family.
But I've got to wait here in my family tree for my real family.
Unfortunately, in his anger, Tigger shouts so loudly that he accidentally causes an avalanche. And so thinking quickly, Tigger rescues all the other characters up onto his family tree, but gets caught in the avalanche himself. But now he's at a point where he's just willing to accept his fate, because even though he's saved them, he still believes that none of them truly care about him. But Rue is determined to prove him wrong by finally getting the
Whoop-de-dooper, loop-de-looper, alley-ooper bones.
right. And in this quick moment, Rue is enough to remind Tigger that there are still people who care about him. If Rue didn't care, why would he take the time to learn this bounce that no one else had ever learned before, that only a true Tigger could ever do? And this at last brings us to the moment where Tigger realizes the thing he's missed this whole time. This entire movie is like a collection of puzzle pieces that create a whole picture. And it's not until this moment that Tigger finally puts all the puzzle pieces together. He still thinks that he needs to find his family, but the other characters finally come clean about the letter, that it was them who wrote the letter to him, and not this mythical family he thinks he needs to find. And at last, Tigger realizes that all those nice things that he thought his real family thought about him was what everyone else thought about him in the 100-Acre Woods, and that they are his real family. Just because they don't look like him or have the same personality as him doesn't mean they aren't his family. Because the true meaning of family is the people who are close to you, who care about you, not just people who look like you or act like you.
You mean you fellas are my family? I'm afraid we have nothing better to offer. Well, of course not, Pooh Boy. 'Cause there's nothing better than the best. I should have seen it all along.
And the reason why Tigger's locket and family tree were empty is because he never had any other family. And it's also some really clever writing that Tigger waits at his family tree for his family, and his real family does show up, and he even puts them into his family tree. The empty family tree also represents the fact that Tigger doesn't need to find another family. And indeed, another family doesn't even exist out there because the one he has is already perfect. And what would it have even meant? What would have been the point if Tigger did find this mythical family that he thought he needed to find? they wouldn't know who he is. They wouldn't care for him. He would just be another person who looks like them. And if anything, that would just make him stand out less. Another thing I really like about this whole story is how nuanced it is, in that both sides, that being Tigger and the rest of the characters, are flawed in their initial beliefs. Of course, that being Tigger not believing that the other characters are really his family, but also the other characters not appreciating Tigger for his uniqueness and how special he really is, until he starts to not feel appreciated because of their lack of appreciation for him. Outside of Rue, of course. I also like how this story shows that you're never too different to fit in, and those traits that sometimes people think are too different are not actually all that different after all. And if your friends and family truly love you, then they'll accept you for who you are, regardless of how different they think you are. Oh, also I should mention that Rue doing the, that one bounce, also further disproves Tigger's mistaken belief that only a true Tigger could do that bounce, by showing that he can be just as much of a true Tigger as any quote-unquote real Tigger that Tigger thought he needed to find. Part of the reason why Tigger's found family here in the 100 Acre Woods is so important is because of how well they understand him. They know him like the back of their hand, and because of that, they know how to care for him. It's why that letter was so meaningful to Tigger, because they knew the exact things that he would find meaningful and caring. And no dream family could ever know that, not without the years of experience and getting to know Tigger that these fellas already have. I also love how this movie shows that sometimes your friends and family may find you annoying or hard to deal with, but that doesn't mean they don't love you. Because if they didn't love you, they wouldn't go to the lengths that the characters in this movie go to for Tigger, putting him first above the storm, dressing up in silly costumes just to make him happy, trying to help him find his family when they think he needs help, and of course writing him that letter to make him feel better. Which reminds me of another thing I really wanted to mention. I said way earlier in this video that there was a nice musical cue, which is this little bit with the piano here.
Maybe there's another way to reach him.
Another way?
Which plays whenever it is implied that they are his true family, and the family that he is searching for.
Dress warmly. The word's sick about me. Eat well. Keep smiling. Stay safe and sound. And here is the best part of all. We're always there for you.
Dress warmly.
Eat well.
Stay safe and sound.
Keep smiling.
We're always there for you.
Which is just a beautiful, subtle bit of storytelling in the music. I always adore little touches like that. Oh, and you didn't think I would forget to mention a certain flawed character who is often forced to admit his mistakes due to his pride. Rabbit, in this case. Rabbit is the ultimate force that proves the point that these characters do really care about Tigger, because he's the one who most often scolds Tigger, and yet he still went out into the cold to find him. And even though Rabbit can be too harsh often, going more than a little bit too far in the original mini adventures of Winnie the Pooh especially, most of the time he scolds Tigger, it's because it's for his own good. He doesn't like messes and he doesn't want people to get hurt, which are understandable things that sometimes Tigger has a hard time comprehending, since he gets lost too easily in his own activities. And so, even at most of his worst moments, Rabbit still does care about Tigger, showing that even when your family members may seem like they don't care, sometimes they care more than you realize, and their harshness can be a side effect of that care they have for you. And being a family means more than just others being there for you when you need them, but you being there for them when they need you as well. It's why Tigger can't just leave, because even if the other Tiggers did exist out there somewhere, they were never there for him and he was never there for them. But Pooh and Piglet and Kanga and Roo and Owl and Rabbit and Eeyore, they've always been there for Tigger when he needed them most. And in return, Tigger has always been there for them. And to leave now would be more than just breaking their hearts. It would be betraying his duty and trust to them as a member of their family. And I think that that is the final thing that pushes Tigger back onto the right track. And just as he puts his family into his family tree in this movie, at the end, he finally does fill that empty locket with a picture of himself and his real family. The one he had been searching for, but was right in front of him the whole time. And so, all of that is why I find the Tigger movie to be an underrated emotional masterpiece.
Oh, I see how it is. You're just going to leave me like that after finishing the video. You're not even going to hear out what I have to say right now. But you should totally watch my gaming channel, which not enough people appreciate for how much work it takes to make these videos. Well, whenever I can actually find the time to edit them. But any support would definitely be appreciated, even just 1 or 2 more loyal viewers. I beg of you. Link in the description, by the way. Oh, and I suppose now would be the perfect time to thank my amazing Patreon and channel member supporters, who go above and beyond compared to the usual viewers. Nothing against all you guys out there, but these people, they're the real deal. I'm also on a few social media platforms if you want to follow me there, with links in the description down below. Although I really only post on like the review sites like Letterboxd, Serialized, and Backlog, so I don't know why I make this such an important part of the outro every time. Anyway, since you're still here, you may as well check out one of my other videos, such as this pretty decently popular video I did on Cedric from Sophia the First and why he's an amazing character. Or perhaps maybe you'd like to see my previous video on Lotso from Toy Story 3 and why he's a terrifying villain. Either way, I'm sure you'll enjoy. But I'm sure you'll enjoy the gaming videos even more. Please, if you pick to watch anything, watch the gaming videos. Anyway, most importantly of all, always remember to be iconic.